twice, and I won both times.
Hey,
But
hey, listen. If you're able to win, hey, more power to you. Just
I'm
don't
winning
turn
off
it.
of dumb luck. I'm not. No, I'm not. Like, granted, you don't lose a lot of money when you start. Like, I bet 10, won 500. But in the same token, I don't want to get into the habit of. It's different when something comes to you naturally. Like when you're not thinking about it, it's not your priority. It's like a pleasant surprise. There's a difference when your anxiety gets you and you're like, I expect this, I need this, I'm betting on this, and
I think
that's.
Jalen scored he scored every point of the life.
You can't get mad at her. You pressed the live button. We're not even in the.
No. I'm not limiting anybody. But it's just a lot. What's good, Ray? Yo, Ray, it just seems like you got everybody on your show. Like you got like respect. No pun intended. But with that said, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to start at 30.
We're brothers, we're happy and we're singing and we're colored. Give me a high five.
All right, cut and print. Beautiful, guys. Dynamite.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the episode 170 of the broadcast titled The Price of Your Soul. And today I'm your host and moderator, the People's Champion, aka Shop Biz Ronnie. And I am joined by the fantasy booking extraordinaire, Dynamite Kid, aka the CEO of No Inc. And his tagline today is "Keep on Walking." We're supposed to get Matt later on the show. But yeah, Ty, we were just talking about betting earlier. Since we're going to start with the vibe check of the show, that's a nice chunk of change that you were able to accrue just with betting from Super Bowl weekend.
Yep.
But yeah, outside of that, man, how was your week off, man?
Relatively quiet. I kind of prefer it to be quiet. I didn't do anything extraordinary. But being home and being able to rest a bit is obviously it's a godsend. So I'm good.
Nah, yeah, pretty much saying. Well, I didn't have the week off. I had to work, but that's good. That's good. That's one thing I do miss about like working in like education. The fact that am able to get those weeks off like you guys.
Yeah, man.
But
it's gonna be a dry next 2 months, though. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, it's gonna be a gap because the gap between now and Easter is y'all gonna have to wait a while. By the time y'all get Easter vacation, it's gonna be May.
Pretty much.
So it's like you got a week off then, and then Memorial Day right after that, and then the end of school. So it's gonna be restless over there at the school.
Yeah, don't remind me.
Yeah, it's all good though. Otherwise, it's been a pretty good weekend overall. Minus some minor stuff, but other than that, it's been a pretty decent week. Just happy the fact that February is almost over. We're about to get to March, which means we're closer to WrestleMania. And a bunch of other stuff too, because I know Revolution's coming soon for AEW, their next pay-per-view event. Not much other stuff because this is when wrestling starts to ramp up around this time of year, around March Madness. Like a lot of stuff within sports and entertainment tend to ramp up around this time of year. And kicking off our first icebreaker question of the show is the WrestleMania plans of the final boss. The Rock appeared on SmackDown this past Friday, where there was a lot of weird dialogue between him and Cody. But he seems to have a fixture on what his role is for this year's WrestleMania. In terms of that impact, what do you think about that, Ty? What do you think about like Rock's impact going into WrestleMania?
I guess the best way to put it is that regardless of how anyone feels, when it comes down to The Rock and WrestleMania, it's basically the philosophy of business, right? It's it's not about how you feel, it's about how many people are going to watch. In the initial, at least, like a lot of people, when I saw that The Rock was being announced for SmackDown Thursday night, I kind of like rolled my eyes and groaned a bit, not because I don't like seeing The Rock, but more so because I was like, here we go. This is where like all the attention's going to go. This is where all the this is where everything's going to cycle in and funnel into. It's going to lead to a lot of eyes. WrestleMania is no longer it's the biggest wrestling event of the year. It always will be, but it is also the biggest party of the year for a lot of in terms of wrestling, trying to gain as much mainstream attention as possible. You want to put the biggest cards up, of course. That's what WrestleMania has kind of championed itself for doing, the biggest cards of the year usually. But it's also how much attention can you drive now that it's a superpower. It's no longer just the biggest pay-per-view. It's a superpower. So when I saw that, I was like, okay, here we go. They're going to put every single bit of everything into this because they want us to watch. And people were complaining. They were like, the road to WrestleMania feels kind of empty compared to last year. And it's like, well, when last year's Mania was built for 2 years, of course it's going to feel kind of empty right now, but this is kind of what I expected to happen.
Staying on that topic, man, what did you think about what he said to Cody? Obviously the quote that everybody's been basically been going, focused on the most is the fact that, he asked for Cody's soul. Like they had a dialogue in terms of saying, and I don't want your championship. I want you to be my champion. I want you to be, since The Rock, quote unquote, owns the WWE based off that dialogue and whatever it was saying. In terms of the business aspect, The Rock kind of made a overture to Cody and asking him something. And obviously it was a pause-worthy moment for a lot of people, but he still asked him the question, in terms of, what he expects and wants from Cody. So what do you think about that exchange and what that could mean going down the road towards WrestleMania?
Well, let me say, first things first, that was a very long TV segment.
Yeah.
The first half of it was what I expected, promoting WrestleMania for next year because they were in New Orleans, which, Jesus, New Orleans, 3 WrestleManias in 10 years is insane. Okay, and that's coming from New Yorkers. We need you guys to not. I'm happy for y'all, but not we need to spread the wealth across this country. 2, when the Take Your Soul line. First thing I thought of was him getting chokeslammed by The Undertaker at Mania last year, actually. That was kind of the irony of it for me. But I get what he means. We got a lot of gooners online who took that the absolute wrong way. But I get what they're trying to do. The argument's been, Cody's already a corporate champion. He's already a figurehead. He's already doing everything that the WWE wants him to do. And I think that based on the story that they want to tell, that's the point. Everybody knows that Cody has put the company, he stuck his neck out for the company, which I'm sure people will take in a lot of different ways in terms of Cody's recent history. But he is their face. He is proud to be their face. He's been called their quarterback. So when everyone's hearing The Rock go, I want you to be my champion, they're sitting here like, what else do you want from this guy? And I think that's the point. Rock says, you're here and you're doing great here, constantly complimented him and said, I want to take you up here to this stratosphere, to a place that you couldn't even fathom, because he is one of the most famous people on the earth. And there is some credibility to what he's saying, and at least in terms of how he's trying to spin the narrative. So the idea of him becoming a truly corporate champion as opposed to just being a good representative or the main representative for the company is an interesting story they could tell based off of that. I get what they're trying to do. I'm not a big fan of it, mainly because I think at this point, I just want to see a lot of these residual stories that have spawned off from the bloodline end, so we can finally get a good clean slate, so we can make some new stories, some truly new stories where we get more people to eat at the table. But I see what they're trying to do. Let's just see if it's actually going to be effective, because I know some people are saying Rock's going to have a representative on his behalf. And people are like, how come this match isn't building to Rock and Cody? Why can't we do that? And it's like, first of all, The Rock could lie. All right, it's not as though he's telling the whole truth here. He could easily lie, but let's say we take his words at face value. Was good, y'all. Was good, family. If we take his words at face value, there are a number of people that could fit that role for Rock, where you just sit there and go, "How dare you?" Like if Cena went corporate, I've seen that cycled around. If Cena's the representative for Rock, I mean, Rock was trying to help Cena in Hollywood, so this might be Cena's way of paying him back. If CM Punk were the representative for Rock, that would be very, very interesting, mainly because it goes against everything we know about Punk's character. So you never really know. But I'm not crazy hopeful for right now. I will give it the benefit of the doubt for right now. But again, I just want to see new stories that are not tied directly to the after effects of the bloodline right now.
I mean, I'm with you on that. Like, I kind of felt like I was going into next week in my mind thinking that CM Punk was definitely winning, and we're going to get that match between him and Cody at Mania, so he can get his main event. And then here comes The Rock, basically kind of like changing or shaking the framework of what Cody's road to WrestleMania looks like. And I mean, I kind of agree, because it's like there's so much that you do have at your disposal, especially with Damian Priest now going to SmackDown and different stars coming in and out. It's just rough, because it's like WWE used to be good at, if you're gonna get a certain type of talent, or during WrestleMania season, you used to basically find ways to better compartmentalize like what you expected out of them and still focus on your main objective going to Mania. This year, however, is a little different, because it's like anything can happen, but at the same time, not enough is being put to showcase that in different areas.
It's an uncomfortable kind of unpredictable.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like for me. It's like when people want things to be unpredictable in a sport where things seem very telegraphed and and like you can kind of see what's happening from a mile away. When it becomes unpredictable, there are two kinds. The type of unpredictable where you don't know what's going to happen, but you have a good feeling about where it's going. And then the unpredictable where you're unsure of where it's going and you're scared of the different possibilities, because most of the ones you could think of are bad or they're not that favorable. And I think in this situation, it's so unnerving that it's leaning more in that direction. Not completely in that direction, but it's leaning more in that direction. And, who knows what The Rock's entrance stopped? Who knows what storylines it halted? Who knows what plans it might interfere with that were already existing or were penciled in? I mean, it did alter the state of that women's match that was supposed to be on the show, because it originally got taken off and then it got turned into what we saw. And that's just an immediate. But in terms of the long term, I don't know. It feels like some of the stuff they could have used for Mania, they blew off on the Raw from Netflix, the initial Raw from Netflix as well. So I don't know. And it's not a very comfortable, I don't know. So I get where you're coming from.
Yeah, it's crazy, because it's like, yo, man, people outside of the bloodline starting to get a little bit of shine, and then all of a sudden you see Rock come in, and even Jacob in his own way kind of straying away from his own, that situation. Like, a lot of good things are basically being pieced together, but because of how the way Mania is being booked right now, or as we're going towards Mania, very, very murky. And right now, Trips is, for good reason, is getting called out in terms of his decisions, in terms of the pacing, in terms of the prioritizing, in terms of the order of how it should be, in terms of the storylines right now. I just feel like it should be better, especially from his standpoint. It could be better. Obviously, we're going to talk about like what solutions we can have in order to circumvent that. But at the end of the day, it's just like, if you've been around long enough, especially in Trips' position, if you've been around long enough, you see how things have worked at this point, especially from a production standpoint. I would think should know better in terms of how to better pace everything that's going on the main roster, at least from the main roster perspective, because you've seen enough to know better. And right now, having Road Dogg doing SmackDown as one of the head writers, it's not a good start.
To give him the benefit of the doubt, Road Dogg was under Vince, where they were writing things for him and he was ripping stuff up. So we don't know what Road Dogg's full potential as a writer could be. So we have to kind of give time on that one too. I'm not the biggest fan of the guy from like interviews and some of his comments on the business, but in the same token, you never know how that'll go. You just gotta kind of have to wait and see. But I feel you though.
My dog. All right, man. Let's pivot to basically our first like fantasy booking. Main topic of the show. Let's talk about basically staying on this topic in terms of booking. It's basically been the motif over the last couple of weeks. What are the pros and cons of a WWE style? What's good, Jabari? What's good. What could be the pros and cons of WWE's booking style?
All right. How would you say? Like what are some pros that come to your mind?
I mean, the pros is obviously the way they tell stories, because back then the wrestling didn't match the way the storylines were portrayed on TV, because certain matches were kind of like the way it was. I do think the match styles caught up, especially over the last 10 to 15 years. It's just more so now where the storylines and the pacing and where you place characters on the card has been an issue, especially on the main roster. And it's like, this is Trips going on, second full year, but he's going on primarily 3 years, 2.5, 3 years as the head of the creative in WWE. And I just expected better from him because of, what you see from NXT. But even then, you saw the issues in NXT as well in terms of his pacing and booking.
Well, let's put it all on the table then. Cool. Let's talk about a few things. One, WWE, the main roster and all the responsibilities and all the different responsibilities that come with being on the main roster are to a higher degree than NXT. NXT is a more controlled environment. Triple H is more like he probably would have felt more comfortable in that environment because he had less factors to deal with that were affecting his product outside of maybe Vince going after him in terms of taking talent and whatnot, which I think is what did affect a lot of those pacing issues in NXT. I will say on the main roster, you're thinking about sponsors, you're thinking about all these different events, all these different charities, all these different companies and whatnot you have to work with. What networks want, what does Netflix want, what does USA want, what does CW want? I do understand why it's not always as direct and clear cut as we'd like it to be. But I will say again, a lot of what pushes those factors into gear, I feel, starts from that creative room. Like, you have the stories that kind of push the narrative and kind of make people want to take part in what you're doing, depending on if you can get them to get over or not. The best way to describe Triple H's booking to me is that I don't think it's that fundamentally different from Vince. I think that Vince was more haphazard with how he was doing things because he would have a lot of stop and starts, but a lot of the mentalities are kind of the same to me. What are the top stars doing? What can we do with them? They're the main priority. And then everything else is kind of just, we're figuring it out and we can make certain things out of other things. Some people will get some big moments, but a lot of these things don't kind of, they don't always pan out the way that they should. And that kind of reminds me of Vince. I feel like Vince goes at a faster pace with it, whereas Triple H goes at a slower pace with it. But a lot of the fundamentals are still the same. I think the biggest pro so far has been the presentation of stories, the presentation of the talent, the presentation of matches and whatnot. A lot of that has increased. For example, what was it? That match with Drew McIntyre and CM Punk where they were doing the four corners. It kind of looked like a cowbell match or a strap match in a sense. That fundamentally looked a lot better than most of the ones we've seen in recent WWE history. The way that people come out to their entrances, the fact that the camera's following them from the gorilla position, from backstage through the kiosk areas, and a lot of that stuff has been done really well. And Lord knows most people care about aesthetics and looks. sometimes over the substance of things. So they're hitting the nail on a lot of the things that people will immediately gravitate towards. So I think Triple H has done pretty well with that. I think another pro that I could personally think of with Triple H's booking is that he does let certain storylines sit for a while. Like he does let them marinate to some degree. I think the extent that he has them cooking is a little too long personally. Like there should be more room for like certain stories don't have to be dragged out. For example, like Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan didn't have to go the way that it did, right? But at least there's room for storylines to kind of grow. Like you have to find that balance there. So I'll give him presentation and obviously the long-term booking thing for the most part as a pro. I think the biggest cons is just to your point, the pacing of things and the fact that like there's certain mistakes that shouldn't have happened. Like for example, one thing Triple H got praised for a while was having a lot of stuff in the background. Like you'd be focusing on a main segment and there'd be another storyline happening in the back. If you look behind the wrestlers that you're supposed to be focusing on, you'd see like Nikki Bella doing something, or you see Drew and Rhea talking or something to that effect. And sometimes it'd be addressed later on, and other times we'd just forget about it. You know? So like I think that stuff like that, like he has to get a lot more of his ducks in a row in terms of like getting a more concrete plan for we've talked about it for weeks. What are the other stories that matter? How do we make those matter as well? How do we get those to a certain point where people are coming into pay-per-views wanting to watch the entire card and not just two matches? You know what I mean?
Like what would be an example of a story that you think that we can basically give more of a highlight to, or you feel like we can basically give more of our investment into, so that fans can be like, all right, this is something that other than the major stories that we're watching that we're enjoying, that we can just sit back and just enjoy this aspect of it. Like which storylines you think that are capable of that?
Well, one that hasn't really been spoken about for a while was Chad Gable's pursuit of gold. I think that overarching storyline of just Chad finally being able to act on his potential. I would have liked to have seen a better comeuppance for that. Obviously, the Intercontinental Championship arc of that story ended some time ago, and Chad has kind of just been doing whatever since then. But the idea of him had he gone to SmackDown and won the U.S. Championship, I think that would have been a good supplement for that story. Him finally winning gold on a level he deserves, and it's a belt that's more made for him than the Intercontinental title was. If it had come down to Chad Gable being the guy to beat Braun Breaker, that would have been an interesting story as well. Or had Chad Gable just bypassed the IC belt and gone for the World Heavyweight title, that would have been interesting too. So that would have been a story I would have liked to have seen. Also, keeping on Gable, the Otis, Alpha Academy thing was abruptly ended. Like there were still legs with that story. The idea that Otis and Maxine and Tozawa separated from Gable and they fought for a while, but the match I think they did have a match, Gable and Chad and Otis, but it didn't feel like the finale that feud deserved, considering how big the audience was getting behind Otis. Considering how they had added I almost said American Alpha. That is a whole different era of Chad. But when they added the Creed brothers and Ivy Nile, like it felt like there was more on the plate there, and it kind of sucks that like Otis and Tozawa, didn't get to run as a team a little bit longer. I know Tozawa had that one head bump that was really scary, but since then they've been healthy. They could have been a force in the tag division for a little bit as well. That could have been their payoff from that as well. The feud with the Creeds and the different types of match dynamics we could have got from that. So for me, I feel like a lot of Chad stuff from early last year kind of went to the wayside. I'd say another story that could have gotten a different highlight would have been the entire Judgment Day. I think had that had been paced better and we would have gotten their ending a little bit earlier, maybe that could have been a highlight where we would have been in a whole different sphere right now where Finn Balor is. Damian Priest may have gotten a few months earlier of a run of, momentum that would have helped him right now, to where even when he's not exactly doing something on his level right now, he would have still felt as credible as he should have. You know, Rhea could have gotten some good character development from that as well, as opposed to just having Rhea and Damian just job out the Judgment Day, which has been an issue. I think Dominic could have gotten something as well, you know, because a lot of the Judgment Day just shifted between Finn trying to be leader and Liv being a part of it in the first place. Love Carlito stuff, though. You know, that stuff a lot of that could have been better managed. I think another story they could have done this with, Theory and Waller, the will they won't they breaking up of Theory and Waller. Where did Shinsuke come from? I still haven't gotten an answer for that. Like, what caused Shinsuke to have this type of change within him? You know, he's kind of a semi-factor now, but like, what was caused? I'm sorry, I'm rambling so long, folks. But like, these are just some of the things that came to mind. It's like, what is happening in these types of stories? Because we saw Waller in Theory facing Obafemi, and Obafemi just needed something to do, so he just, you know, took out a team. But like, what's going on with that? What's going on with what's going on with a lot of the mid card of SmackDown, to be quite honest. Like, people are complaining about how hard it is to watch 3-hour SmackDowns, and part of it is because we don't even know what to do. If it's not the women's title, the world championship, or the bloodline, what are we really doing during that period? So, you know, no, Tag Division's doing some storyline stuff. That's my apologies. No, they are doing something, but you get the idea. Like, I would say some of those storylines.
But the fact that you had to even mention that in that light is a problem.
I think we covered the two of the big bullet points so far, just like the contrast in styles and those pros and cons. Honestly, I don't know why it's not being brought more to the attention of people. You know what I mean? Like,
I know why.
Why would you say?
I think it's because, like, on the surface, like, aesthetically, because they're doing well aesthetically so well right now in terms of their popularity, it's basically hiding everything, you know, that basically needs to be done or basically needs to be tweaked a little bit. But however, it's noticeable enough for you to see, like, exactly what's wrong. Like, even now with this week, the fact that I think it was Fightful or another outlet that talked about, like, the women being frustrated, you know, in terms of their booking and their creative, you know, decision process. And it's like, it's crazy because before we even got to this episode, we talked about this 2 episodes prior in terms of what was going on. Yeah. So it kind of does tie in terms of what we've been talking about the last couple of weeks in terms of, like, Trips either booking himself into a corner or holding on to certain stories too long or not prioritizing certain things, while in that pocket would be more feasible, especially to fans.
Yeah, it sucks because, like, a lot of that creative dysfunction makes you wonder what really matters anymore outside of the prioritized stuff. Because I'll put it to you this way. We've talked about it in different ways for the past year. Like, what pay-per-views really matter? You have about 12 of them a year. 12 of them. Then you have the Saturday Night's Main Event specials and everything. What really matters outside of maybe 3 of them? SummerSlam, the Rumble, and WrestleMania, right? So everything else is kind of just like a means to an end, and you feel it when you watch these cards because the cards are short, which is fine, helps on time, but like, the cards are short and you get a lot of predictable finishes that feel like they could have just been Raw main events or SmackDown main events. And you sit there and you go, and there's nothing wrong with that. Those type of main events can be great, but like, when you see how much is not put into those shows, you go, what's going on? You see the WWE is expanding their content, right? We have LFG now, WWE Evolve. I know NXT Level Up was a thing for quite a while to build NXT, and everyone's excited because it's like, oh, they're giving opportunities to all these people, and it's like, well, I can take you back a few years ago when we had 2 brands of NXT with just NXT and NXT UK. And it's hard to make that crossover of talent when most people are only watching a certain amount of things. I know we're in a content era, but let's be honest, how many people were watching NXT UK alongside the other shows? You know, how many of those talents were doing well when they converted over to the other shows? Like, for example,
only a couple, like,
only a handful, right? Like, I'm happy. I love people like Charlie Dempsey and a lot of the UK talents, but a lot of them had to make some weird transitions over to the show where, like, you could see if they weren't exposed to certain factors, they wouldn't be allowed to swim well. Like, what do you call it? The storyline with Charlie Dempsey and what's her name from the NWA? God, I'm forgetting her name off the top of my head. But they had to put those two together for them to kind of to swim well on the show. Not to say that Charlie was doing bad before, but to kind of give more personality to Charlie's character so people could stay interested alongside the quarter catch crew. You had someone like Axiom. Axiom was a kid in NXT UK, and they did not allow a kid to work very well when he switched over during NXT 2.0. So he had to become a mass wrestler and have this program basically with Nathan Frazier in order to really, really have the foothold he has in NXT right now, right? You realize that a lot of the talents that are going to be pushed going forward, some of them might not even be fully ready for the responsibilities they're about to get, right? Like, for example, some of the top talents in the company right now are just the most over people. And by wrestling fans' logic, if you're over, you should be getting certain spots. And I get that. But some people are over and they might not necessarily be ready for that opportunity right now. Or if they do get the opportunity, they could fizzle out really quickly. Like, for example, I love Trick Williams.
He's not ready.
But if Trick Williams were to be pushed to the top of, like, even being pushed to the top of NXT, he has issues sometimes with his performances to where, like, it's not so much that he can't be there. It's just he needs a little bit more refining to fully be comfortable there. And sometimes you have to, give somebody a push even when it's a little early. But in the case of Trick, it's like he had 2 NXT championship runs, I'm pretty sure, right? And we're still saying that he should continue to refine himself there, or he should find storylines that'll help build him up more so that he can properly be in that top spot, whether it's in NXT or the main roster of WWE. So you're sitting there and you realize a lot of stars that we do like are going to get pushed over a lot of stars that may be more deserving right now or have been grinding for a while. Like, for example, I love the Metaphor Girls, and I think they're great as a tag team. But I know that at some point, because of how big of a star Lash Legend comes across in terms of her aesthetic and her appearance and her presence, they're going to want her to be on her own at some point, right? And they might prematurely rush that and have her be on her own, and she's going to be getting pushed over people like Zelina Vega. She's going to be getting pushed over people like Michin. She's going to be getting pushed over people like Kairi Sane. She's going to be getting pushed over some people who've been there and have been grinding for a while and probably deserve that opportunity because of all the years they put in, and they've been waiting their turn, and someone else is going to jump up. Because look at what NXT is pumping out. A lot of the women are gorgeous. A lot of them are very talented in the spurts that they are in the ring, in their character. They're younger. It's hard to watch a lot of, like, I'll put it to you this way. Let's say you watch LFG or you watch WWE Evolve and you develop a connection with a talent. If that talent doesn't fit a certain mold right now, there's a good chance that they'll be snubbed to the side for someone who's just a bit more aesthetically pleasing, a bit more on the presentation aspect. And then you bring them to the main roster and realize a lot of those other talents that are there, like a Cedric Alexander that was there, or a Fabian Eichner, and a lot of these other guys are just good hands. They're going to be treated as just good hands. And the ones that may not even be ready for these spots are going to immediately get these opportunities, or they're going to be worked on as pet projects. And it's just a little bit disheartening, And when you combine that with the main landscape, you're kind of just sitting there like, what am I really going to be excited for if I already know how everything's going to go? Like, does that make sense?
No, it makes sense. But all right. So now that we know that those are the issues, I'm not sure if I should answer that now or like towards the end of the show. I guess we can talk about the solutions later. But there has to be solutions, easy fixes to what is like basically hampering WWE right now. Because it's like your popularity is at its highest. Sure, like, things are going great, but things could be better. Not everything's perfect. And that's with any, wrestling company. Like, as good as AEW starting to get on the good foot right now with certain things that they're doing well, It's not a perfect, thing. Even with
No.
TNA. So like nothing is perfect. As good as NXT has been, there's still the glaring issue is the popularity of the men because the women are basically dominating the show. Now, I'm more happy about the fact that the women are dominating and putting their, foothold on the show. But at the end of the day, if you're gonna basically have the next big face as from a male's perspective in WWE, they have to basically show up and do what they have to do on the men's perspective, on the men's side in NXT. So I think there has to be something, to be done, or like certain solutions that could definitely help and alleviate a lot of those pressures on both sides. Because if you help by not doing what you said before, like pushing, the Metaphor girls onto the main roster, or Trick Williams, obviously moving forward, I think it's going to do them a disservice. And I love Trick, and I have a lot of love for the Metaphor girls, but I just believe that if you're able to basically do that now, you're rushing a good thing. I need them to season themselves a little more in NXT. I think they do need that, over time. Like I do think they need more of that. Not saying that they're not ready, but because of the way the main roster is so stacked right now, you don't, like you said before, you don't want to necessarily prioritize them over other stars that they're trying to put on, especially in the mid card. If you have enough, you have to basically find a good rotation of people that you trust, like from the mid card scene, to contend for the mid card titles and or tag team titles. There's a lot that's positive, but there's a lot of things that they really do need to do better at. They can't just rely on, we got these great big stories, but someone's going to be left out. And I get it. It's only so much TV time that you have, but
more people can eat at that table than you think.
Boy.
That's what I feel like. I feel like a lot of fans don't want to have a real long, nuanced conversation about it because wrestling's never really been portrayed in a nuanced way. It's always been portrayed in a simplistic way. So we're having quick conversations. We're getting our emotions off really quickly. And if we don't like something, we might go in depth if it's something that we're really passionate about. But for the most part, people don't want to talk about all the issues that way. And I get it. But here's the thing. I think that as fans, it's up to us to have more of those conversations because we can't sit here and keep it simple. And then when we watch a pay-per-view card, go, man, this shit boring. I'm only here for really one thing or two things. Why is nothing else really catching my eye? And it's because we're not doing. Because like one of the biggest conversations people have had is whose fault really is it? Is it the fans or the creative? And the answer is pretty simple. It's a bit of both. It's more on the creative end because they're the ones that are making the stories, but the fans have to, like, you have to work in harmony. Like, for example, let's use a Trick Williams because I do like Trick. He's a very over person. And a lot of people are going to want him at the top because of how hot he would be in terms of his momentum. Mm-hmm. Now, as the creative, you have to recognize, because you work with the talent more directly than the fans do, Trick is over. But we need to, and this is for anybody, not just Trick. Let's say hypothetically someone with Trick's momentum. He's over, but he's still learning. So we need to steady that momentum a certain way. That's one of the reasons why a few weeks ago I brought up Jey Uso and how I thought the IC belt would have made more sense for him in the long run than the world title did. Not because he isn't deserving of it, but more so because if you want to put somebody in a position, you should give them the best cushion to do so possible. And if you've already proven yourself to be good with the championship before, which is half the reason why those mid-card belts exist, then you got to go down that journey and make things work. Now, some people skip that process. I get it. But a lot of times the people who skip that process are the ones that can make that jump feasibly, or they can learn quicker than others. And now you have a conversation of incompetence and this and that, but that's not really what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that for some people, some journeys are smoother than others. And just because somebody else gets a jump early doesn't mean that you necessarily have to. How long did it take Daniel Bryan to get over the way that he did? Took about, by the time he became WWE champion, it took about 2 years.
Yeah, about 2 years.
And that's because he found a catchphrase that worked, that let him emphasize his arrogance more when he was a heel back in 2012. And then he became a delusional babyface in 2013, and he became a admirable, more endearing babyface by 2014. right? A lot of that worked to Bryan's advantage. A lot of that worked in a way where it took time to do that. And he had multiple world title runs in between. Well, he had a couple different title runs in between. But by the time he got there, it wasn't like he wasn't ready to take on the world championship. But he found a perfect harmony of character and wrestling by that point to where there was no question about it, right? And you want to do that with a lot more wrestlers. Like, for example, in the case of Trick, it's usually an in-ring thing with him. Like, he has a lot of cool, flashy moves, but the footwork and his coherence and a lot of things he would get better at with experience should be the things that they focus on with him. So by the time that he is more confident in what he's doing than he already is, he'd botch less. He'd be in better positions less. He'd have more wherewithal, and he would be way more ready for that title opportunity than say he did when he was just hot. You know, at that point he would be over and ready, and that's what you want more for. But because WWE is so big on presentation and so big on, stars being a certain way right away, like, I have fears about that. I have fears that certain people are going to get pushed too early. The standard and quality of what we're watching is going to go down just to accommodate the fact that someone is hot with the crowd. Somebody can be hot with the crowd, but they have to be hot with the crowd and be ready to take on every responsibility that comes to them. And sometimes you do just get fed to the wolves. But if you can reduce the chances of that happening as much as you can and do things more properly, then you should. That's just kind of how I feel about it.
Okay, pretty good.
Where is the match?
Yeah, like Matt was like, "Yo, I'm available today," and he's not showing up. Like, like Matt should have been on here, like, doing his usual, antics on the show. But anyway, last week we had a segment where basically we put our GM hats on and talked about, like, which kind of talents would we prioritize or put on. This week, however, what changes would you make to the current booking style of WWE, whether it's storylines or the way they tell stories? So Ty, what would be something as a GM? What would you do? What would you do in terms of, is this for any story or any type of style? How would your style of booking help WWE currently?
Based on what we've had the past 3 or 4 years,
Kyle,
what's good,
dog? What's good?
Based on what we've had the past 3 or 4 years, I would make a lot more of the championships have a competitive feel to them, and I would actually endorse more title changes. And I don't mean like haphazard title changes. It definitely does depend on the story, but I think that more people should be able to eat throughout the year to kind of show that there are, like, to really emphasize the amount of options that they had. There was a point in time on Monday Night Raw where you had Seth Rollins, Cody Rhodes, Jey Uso, and Sami Zayn as 4 top baby faces on Raw. And a lot of people saw that as a good thing because it showed that you didn't have to have John Cena or Roman Reigns on a show to sell out a show, to close the night, to send the fans home happy. You had a lot of options there, and there should be an equal amount of heel options, or relatively. So I would spread that, like, I would emphasize variety, because I think variety is a thing that makes professional wrestling really special. You have your serious throwback wrestlers. You have your new gen wrestlers that are more akin to the current generation. You have people who are high flying specialists. You have technical specialists. You have brawlers. You have all these different things, and the clashes make for, what's the word?
I get it, Kyle. I get it.
Exactly. But it's the clashing of all those things that make the interest. That's what causes the controversies. That's what makes things interesting. So when it comes to like we talked about it a bit last week, but the secondary championships, the Intercontinental and US for the men and the women, emphasize that variety. Pick people who emphasize different aspects of the game so that every demographic, or most of the demographics, have somebody to latch on to. Not everybody's going to be a fan of how Seth Rollins wrestles. Some people are going to love it. Some people are going to want to gravitate towards a very charismatic person like a Seth. But some people may want to gravitate towards somebody who's a bit more reserved. like an Aleister Black was back in the day, where he didn't talk that much, but you felt his presence. You felt an aura around that guy that made you go, this is someone who you should be taking seriously. You have to emphasize that variety, which is another reason why I say more people can eat at the table than you think. Because if you have those different, if you have that variety emphasized, you have more options to fall back on. And you also end up with people being able to respect the differences amongst each other. Like maybe it's not your favorite person. Like your favorite wrestler is The Rock, right? I would say that The Rock is fundamentally different than The Undertaker. And Undertaker is very different from Triple H. And Steve Austin is similar to some of these guys, but he has his own distinct, like that was what made the Attitude Era really fun. Everybody had their person in every division or in most of the divisions, to where you'd sit there and be like, yo, I like The Rock a lot, but I really like Chris Jericho too. And I also like Eddie Guerrero, but I also love the New Age Outlaws. You know, like you have to emphasize that more in your divisions, to where somebody can sit there and go, okay, they're like, this is what the future of the company looks like. This is what we can really sit back and just kind of get immersed in. And that will also help the flow of stories too.
I have a question. Do you think, based on what you said, do you think because of that, do you think some of that, the reason why some of it isn't the way it's supposed to be, is to be due to in terms of how the fans perceive it, or is it because of how like the way it's being presented by creative on TV from how we consume it? It's a yes or no question.
Well, it's more so how creative puts it out, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that push the narrative. The fans can uplift certain wrestlers for sure, but at the end of the day, the fans also can lose their motivation for somebody if they see it's going nowhere. Like look at Dolph Ziggler. Dolph Ziggler was a darling of the fans for a long time, but when the audience was quick to realize, once WWE kept pushing him down and down and down and down, did people care as much about Dolph Ziggler in 2020 as they did in 2015?
No.
You have to, in my opinion, you have to give the fans kind of like a ground, like a stage one state. Like you have to be like, okay, here's this guy. The guy goes and does his thing, puts himself on, puts the other wrestler on. They go out there, put out a great performance, and they do that consistently, and let the audience choose who they want. And then you can integrate those people in. You can obviously have your own plans, but you also have to lay down groundwork for people to kind of organically build themselves up too. That's half of what the mid card is. You know what I mean? Letting people find themselves and build themselves up so that they can be ready to be used in those bigger positions. So it really is more on the creative than it is on the fans. The fans should take responsibility and lift people that they like too, but they also have to be given a reason to care as well. So that's more so on the company than anything else.
All right, that's a good answer. That's pretty cool. All right, that I do respect. Dang, I think we pretty much answered everything that we wanted to talk about. Dang, we did it under 48 minutes. How about that, Ty?
I was hoping for more interjections because I thought Matt was gonna join us today.
That's what I thought too. That's what.
No,
that's
I don't want to give him
was
too much
here.
flack. Things happen. You know, we're adults.
It's life. It's life. But I do know with E's new schedule, we'll definitely have him a lot more so on the show. Thank God to have more interjections. But all right. So in closing, like based on you being the GM, right? Out of those changes, give me an example of a star, part of the card that you would change to basically best fit your argument.
Stars that I would change to best fit.
No foolishness.
Yeah.
You're right.
Y'all are getting straight medicine today.
No shenanigans. No shenanigans today.
A star that would fit my idea for that booking, like of the variety.
Yeah, like what would be a star? Because you mentioned Dolph Ziggler, and the way you mentioned him, there's a star that kind of fits in the same pocket.
Okay, so A star that would fit stars that would fit that variety. Let me try the women's division, for example.
Cool.
If you go to Raw, you have Rhea, you have Io. Liv and Raquel got moved into more of a tag team scene right now. They're capitalizing more on them as a duo. So you have that. So it's kind of just Rhea and Liv Morgan. No, what am I doing? It's just Rhea and Io right now, right? So that's
It's
a pretty
at the main from the main roster. Well, basically for the main event scene. Excuse me, for the women.
for the Raw side right now.
Yeah.
So how would you fix that and make that more variety filled? I would move certain people up that really could do something. So for example, if I could just use the entire roster for an example.
Mhm.
Ray is kind of your like alternative. He's a powerhouse. She fits a couple different demographics. Io is a really skilled but vibrant type of character. So I'd say other characters that you can add in there. There's no reason why a person like Natalia can't be up there as sort of your old school, hardworking, shooter-esque, old school wrestler type. That's like it really embraces the veteran role in that spot. There's no reason why, like in a hypothetical, you couldn't have a character like a Bianca over there, because she would mesh well with a lot of the styles. She could match Rhea's power. She could match Io's athleticism. She's one of the only two that really consistently does. Right. Another person that you can add to that equation would be a character like a Roxanne in terms of the heel department, being a very talented but way too overconfident heel who, once she gets humbled, starts to cower back. So you can have someone to that degree. And then if you were to add another character in that equation, because Natalia is a veteran, so she could kind of jump between face and heel depending, because she has a lot of experience and she would know which opportunities are the better for her. So she'd be a tweener. Ray is a face. Io's a face. Bianca's a face. In terms of heels, another heel would be a person who can contend with the top but isn't a cowardly heel. So you'd have a chicken shit heel. Roxanne could be chicken shitish, but you can have a heel who would be more like Nam about it.
Shayna.
That could be Shayna.
That could be
For
Shayna.
sure, where she's like the one that could, like, the lethal weapon of a person.
I'm mad she's not part of the damn chamber.
Right. Or
Man.
even if you had like a Tiffany Stratton as a chicken shit heel, like, again, we're not talking about their current positions, but just talking about what they bring to the table. Tiffany Stratton could be the talented chicken shit heel. Roxanne could be the talented chicken shit heel, even though she's very, very skilled. You can have someone to the effect of, say, an aspiring babyface, like a Lyra Valkyria, where she's a gutsy fighting babyface who doesn't back down from a challenge. Not to say that the other ones wouldn't, but it's part of her character because she's moving up, right? So she would be even more ballsy than the other ones because, like, yeah, Lyra's going to look at someone like a Shayna and go, I'm not afraid of you. It's like, I know what you're capable of, but I need to make a name for myself here. I'm not as established as the others, so I'm going to take more risks. I'm not afraid of you, and she could build her name that way. I'm thinking of it more from that perspective, because when you look at the current Raw scape, it's basically two. And everyone else seems more appropriate for, like, they're doing Raw and SmackDown for this chamber, if I'm correct. But if it was just built off of Raw stars, it'd feel empty because you don't really care for the other people, right?
Yeah.
So I'm saying, like, if you talk about Raw and it's just Rhea and Io, this is the same roster that has somebody like an Asuka. And Asuka, who is this, like, I agree with all that was said. Jesus Christ.
God, Kyle.
If you're going off of the actual Raw roster, Asuka is a good foil to a Shayna. Asuka is very haphazard. She's very, like, unpredictable. She'd be more of a tweener-esque character anyway. But if she were on the babyface side, she'd be the foil to a Shayna Baszler, because they're both really dangerous and they'd basically be two dragons taking each other out. If you're talking about who would be a foil to a Roxanne Perez, because chances are she might end up on Raw, Zelina Vega would be a good foil to a Roxanne. Where it's like,
didn't she get traded to SmackDown? Oh, not traded, but did she go to the SmackDown via the?
Oh no, you're right. She did go to SmackDown. You're right. She did go to SmackDown.
Because I know Bailey's on Raw now because of that.
Well, Bailey is the proper foil to Roxanne, where it's like Roxanne is promising and she's very talented at a young age, so she has a big head. And then Bailey is very talented, but she's a veteran and she's been in a similar position to Roxanne. We saw that a couple years ago when she turned heel initially. So you have that. Lyra being the gutsier one of the the fact that Bailey isn't involved in the world title division on Raw is a whole nother situation. Even though her being in the Intercontinental division wouldn't be bad, but you get what I'm saying. Like
that wouldn't be bad either.
You have to properly set those up. So for every one baby face, there should be a heel or two that kind of foils them. And for every heel, there should be a baby face in that regard. It's not really that hard, but I'm just drawing a blank because I'm mixing up the rosters after that superstar entry window they had earlier in the months.
Yeah, that's in terms of the portal. No, but that's a very good example in terms of like what you would change and what you would integrate, especially on parts of the card and how it would benefit that particular division on the roster, whether it's on Raw or SmackDown. So I definitely respect that example.
Kyle doesn't. No, I'm playing.
hey, if Kyle wants to come on the show next week but then again, it's Elimination Chamber. But if he wants to come on and basically, have his thoughts about it, by all means, Kyle.
Do you want to parlay that into the chamber?
Kyle already has an open invite. But speaking of the chamber, prediction time, because we got a few minutes left on the show. I believe next week is Elimination Chamber live from Toronto, Canada, as the WWE has their final pay-per-view before WrestleMania 41 in Vegas. Let's kick it off with I'm gonna kick it off with the unsanctioned match. Who do you got in that match? Kevin Owens or the fan favorite Sami Zayn? Nah, come on now, Kyle. You already know you got an open invite. Just pick a date. Come on.
I want it to be Kevin. I want it to be Kevin. Especially considering Sami is not fully recuperated. I think it'd be dumb to have Sami win unless it's by some sort of like Kevin slipped on a banana peel type of deal. So I really need Kevin to win. Kevin has been dying for months. I can't stand it anymore.
Kevin needs a win. It's crazy because usually you'd be on the Sami side when Sami needs a win, but the fact that to hear you kind of say like, you know what, Kevin needs this one.
I mean, if it's going to continue, Sami probably will get the dub at Mania. So I would hope that Kevin gets the win here to properly set Sami up.
True. Somehow, like for me, the only reason why I think that Kevin is winning is two reasons. One, Kevin needs to win. Two, I know there's going to be shenanigans during that match because they might set up Orton and KO. And then for Sami, people think Sami's going to have a chance just by, Orton intervening. But Karrion Kross has become more prominent on TV now. And they're actually giving him an invested story where it's like, okay, now people know that he's the reason or a checkpoint of people's character traits turning a certain way. So I do think that's a good avenue if they go that way. If Sami's losing, that's just how I see it. But I got KO winning as well, winning in the unsanctioned match. I don't know how gruesome it's going to be, but I just know it's going to be a fun match that night in Toronto. Tiffany Stratton teaming up with Trish Stratus, taking on Nia Jax and Candice LeRae. Who do you got in this tag team title match?
I don't think Trish loses in Toronto. I don't think Tiffany loses in Toronto on the road to facing Charlotte. So I'm gonna go with the blondes to win.
It'd be crazy if Charlotte comes out and intervenes and be like screws Tiffany on the way to Mania. But I got Tiffany and Trish winning as well. Anything else you wanted to add?
I can see Charlotte getting involved for sure. That would be a lot of heat to get on yourself, doing away with Miss Toronto on TV, especially considering Charlotte's beaten Trish in the past as well. It's kind of weird to see. I feel like seeing all three of them in the ring would be kind of weird. I feel like it feels like the Squirtle evolution. For like, you know what I mean? So, but yeah, I can see that as a possibility. But I'll stick with Tiffany and Trish, and maybe Charlotte comes in after and messes both of them up.
Okay. All right. So final two matches. The women's elimination chamber match: Liv Morgan versus Alexa Bliss, Bianca Belair, Bayley, Naomi, and Roxanne Perez. Who you got winning this one?
Repeat the names again. My bad. I like zoned out for a quick second.
Liv Morgan, Alexa Bliss, Bianca Belair, Bayley, Naomi, and Roxanne Perez.
And this is to determine Rhea Ripley's challenger.
Mm-hmm.
Considering where they're going with Liv and Raquel, I would hope Bianca and Liv don't win. So I'm going to factor them out because y'all did that. If you wanted Bianca and Rhea, you should have set it up better. I don't want this makeshift nonsense.
Yeah.
You also had a chance to do it 2 Manias ago. I won't forgive you for that. Let's see. Naomi, no, out because of the same reason.
Yep.
So that just leaves what?
Bayley and Roxanne Perez. Just crazy.
Which in itself could be its own Mania match. This is very weird. That's very weird.
You see the conundrum.
If anything, I think it makes sense for Roxanne to win this then.
Mm-hmm.
But if Io, it's going to be a multi-woman match at Mania, Liz. It's looking like that's what it feels like. But I'm going to go with Roxanne because it feels like everyone else is canceling each other out. And I don't expect Bayley to beat Roxanne in this.
Mm-mm.
So I'm going to go Roxanne. I could be wrong, but I'll go with that for now.
Okay. And the main event, the men's elimination chamber match: John Cena taking on CM Punk, Drew McIntyre, Logan Paul, former El Campeon Damian Priest, and Mr. Crash Out himself, Mr. Seth Rollins. Who wins this match? Because winner of this match faces off against Cody at this year's WrestleMania.
I don't want Cena. I really don't. I don't
want him either.
I know people want it because of legacy and they want the last run. There's so many ways you can do it without this. Oh my god. You know what? Damian Priest, man.
I wanted selfishly. I wanted Damian because
man.
I want something different.
You know what? How about this? Anyone but Logan. Give me Andrew. I think it's gonna end up being
Phil.
Oh God, is Roman's in this?
Oh yeah, I forgot. Roman
Did you say Roman's? Oh ew! Oh God, that means that Rock could pick Roman to be his guy, and then that'll be no, not again.
No, wait a minute.
No, Roman's not in it, right?
No, Roman's not in it. It's John, Punk, Drew, Logan, Damian, and stuff.
I want Drew. I'd want Drew. I want Drew. I want Damian. I want something else. God,
if Cody says no to Rock on Saturday.
Yo, no, it's Drew.
It's Drew.
It's Drew. Wait, it's true. If Drew is Rock's then they had the handshake on social media a couple months ago. Mm-hmm. Oh wait, you could
and remember when he re-signed his contract, who did Drew shout out?
The Rock. Yeah, it's Drew.
It's gotta be Drew.
Yeah, please be Drew.
It's gotta be
no,
Drew.
yes, politicking working for the benefit. Yes. Yes. Poor LA Knight, but yes.
No, I think LA gets Shinsuke and Mania for the United States Championship.
Where did he come from? Seriously, somebody tell me where Shinsuke appeared out of. What happened? Did he appear under a rock like what's her name from Power Rangers? Like what happened? I want to know.
He probably watched too many seasons of Death Note or Demon Slayer. There's his character.
All right. No, but yeah, I think Drew would be a good option. If Drew is the corporate champion that Rock wants and it's Drew and Drew gets his main event.
It fits.
Drew gets his main event. Also, what is a WrestleMania main event? I meant to ask that earlier. What is a WrestleMania? Like Charlotte and Jey Uso both won WrestleMania main events, right? What is a WrestleMania main? I know it's not the first time they've done that, where they say it's the main event and they're not going to close the show, but
or co-main in terms of like the setup match. I mean, I remember Jobber Tears saying that. I remember watching the Jobber Tears podcast one time, and it was like, I think the main event to them it means like the very last match. Whether
well,
it's
that's
the
what it
first night or the second
traditionally
night.
means. But like,
Yeah.
then you go to like, let's say you go to WrestleMania 29, and they say we have 3 main events, and it was like Brock and Trips, and CM Punk and Taker, and Cena and Rock, and Punk is like, I'm not stupid. I know what the main event. Here's my thing. I'm gonna ask the fans this. But this is one of my closing things before we go, because we're gonna have the highlight, and then we're gonna have the match of the week. What is a Mania? Like, what is the main event? Like, what does the word main event mean to you in WWE? Is it like how you see the name finisher, where it's like it's a big move, but it might not be the thing that ends things? Or do you see the main event as like the ultimate, the last match? Because my question to y'all is, if both WrestleMania main events are main events, then how come Roman has never main evented night 1 and not main evented night 2? If Roman were to main event night 1, that would count as a Mania main event. But how come Roman has never only main evented night 1?
I bet you, in terms of the eyes of WWE, they use the technicality of the final match of either night and say that's the main event for that night, and the main event for next night. But you really know the main event is the final match of the next night, regardless of whatever you may think.
But that's
the main
my
event,
thing.
at least to me.
How do you
is the
view
final
that?
match.
Because Sasha versus Bianca, do you view that as a WrestleMania main event, or do you view it as a WrestleMania halfway checkpoint?
No, I mean the main event. That was night 1 back in 22, right?
Yes, but going off of what you just said, if the real main event is night 2, does that make Bianca versus Sasha a real main event? Does it make it, or is it just a halfway point? Did Roman and Rock versus Cody and Seth last year, was that a real Mania main event, or was that the halfway point?
That's a good question.
It was Sammy and Kevin versus the Usos a real Mania main event or a halfway point? You know what I'm saying? Like, it is
or Austin the following year.
Yeah, or like Kevin and Austin. This is what I'm talking about. Like, in reality, based off the Rumble, Jey Uso should be the last match of night 1 or 2, and Charlotte and Tiffany should be the last match of night 1 or 2. Bayley should have been the last match of night 1 last year.
By that definition.
So like, you get what I'm saying? Like, so folks, what is a real main event? Is it just one big marquee match? Because if that's the case, why use the term main? Like, do you use the term main feast for one of the meals of your Thanksgiving feast, or is the main feast the one that everyone's waiting for? You feel what I'm saying?
So it's the difference between appetizers and the main course.
Exactly.
All right. Pretty, good shit. As a Gene.
I promise I'll talk less next week.
No, it's all good. That was Jay just coming in. All right, cool. So we got Drew winning. We got Roxanne, KO, and the Blondes winning next week. So those are we're locking those in.
I expect The Rock to reference his Toronto, Canada promo from 2003.
And we definitely expect Cody to say no, and Drew being his, champion going into WrestleMania. So,
yep.
Okay, so we're pretty much locking those in. This week, since Matt's not here, he's not on the show because he didn't give me somebody to basically showcase.
Oh, how dare you! The way he's acting on TV right now, how dare you?
No. I am showcasing Xavier Woods, Austin Creed this week. This Black History Month in wrestling, and my reason why is because of the fact that since 2014, what he did with the New Day, being part of the New Day, founding them, and doing what they've done over the last now 11 years into that story, he's branched off so many great things based off what he's been doing in wrestling, whether he was Consequences Creed in TNA, but since he's been in WWE, I think he's really broken out, and most of his impact has been out the ring in terms of what he's done for gamers. He's helped bring so many fans who love gaming, who love anime, into the cosplaying, in terms of like you doing the Comic Cons, into professional wrestling. I don't think like there was a gap where fans couldn't necessarily relate to the people that's on TV until we got the New Day, especially for people like us. Like to see what they were able to do. Oh, they're goofy. They're not like militant like the Nation Domination. Cool, but the reason why we rock with them is because they're basically us. Like they understand, like, you know, the culture of video games, the culture of wrestling, the culture of what makes them them. And at the same time, like he's about that in the ring. Like he is a former king of the ring. He is a former, you know, multi-time tag team champion. Like they're right behind the Usos in terms of the best tag team in this modern day era. You know, they have he's helped break records. You know, and what he's done for G4 TV, trying to revive that, even though it died again. Like he's able to branch off so many things, and it was able to help enhance a lot of people's personalities backstage with up, down, down by doing what he's been doing. And I think that, you know, I don't think it goes enough said. Sure, he's heel now, you know, in terms of what he's doing right now on TV, but in terms of the totality of what he's meant into professional wrestling and what he's been, you know, for him being black and what he's been able to do for the culture, I don't think that's been talked about or celebrated enough because everything is still in real time. So, you know, I'm giving my flowers to, you know, Xavier Woods.
Definitely a pioneer of content creation for WWE that we didn't see up until, like, I'd say Zack Ryder maybe before him, but we didn't really get to see that.
He was a forefather.
He's one of them, like a Zack Ryder, like a Matt Hardy, right?
Yeah.
In terms of nerd culture, like a Shane Helms, like a Shelton, you know, like what he was able to do for a section of the audience, especially in our community, that didn't get enough love because a lot of the characters on TV would be stereotypes, would be crazy stereotypes on our, like, based on our people. To be a blurred, to just be a goofy black guy and be respected for it, to be able to be your authentic self. Yeah, no, I give Xavier Woods a lot of credit along with the rest of the New Day, but especially for him, a lot of people don't realize he was doing it before that. He was dressing up like Zack from Power Rangers. He was doing a whole bunch of different attires and stuff based off his interests. So much love to Xavier Woods. I still don't like you on TV. I don't like what I don't like the way you walk, the way that you talk on TV. But you know, Austin Creed, cool. But Xavier Woods, I got problems.
Yeah, because I hate Kofi. What is it? Him being mustacheless. That's just some, you know, it's just it's the most dastardly thing I've seen on TV. My man looks like an African warlord on TV, bro.
I've never hated somebody's upper lip more than I do Kofi Kingston right now.
Yeah, man. But for real, shout out to Xavier Woods. You know, especially his ties with IGN and everything, man, and especially video game culture. Like he will forever get love off the strength of that. Since E's not here yet again, I'll be doing his match of the week. He forwarded his match of the week this week, and this week he said his match of the week is Ron Simmons versus Vader for the WCW Championship. Now, the reason why I'm sure why he picked that match in the height of Black History Month is because Ron Simmons was the first notable African American World Heavyweight champion in wrestling, where he won it against Vader about a month before I was born in August of '92. And it was a significant moment in time. You know, obviously Ron Simmons had a great career in wrestling as Farouk in the APA and, of course, with the Nation Domination. But that moment in '92, that match in itself, and yes, Ty, he did win with a wrestling move. I concede to that.
He won with a power slam, and he had a high, deep pin, man. That's listen.
He won with a wrestling move. I'm not fighting it. I'm accepting it. You know, like he won with a wrestling move, and Ty knows why I said that. But yeah, like it was definitely a moment in time to see everybody celebrating him. And
you saw that one dude rush from the back of the crowd to the front to see the victory, jumping out of his seat with the popcorn, everyone putting their hands up. You saw, like, for a moment, you saw harmony amongst people of different backgrounds that you just don't get to see enough of, or you'd like to see more often. Ron Simmons doing that, being celebrated by the entire locker room. You know, the work that Harley Race and Vader did in the build up to that match to give all the sympathy and all the fanfare behind Ron Simmons. That's an awesome moment. For some, and for people who don't understand, for a lot of people, that was what Kofi Mania meant to us a couple years ago. Is what that moment meant to a contingent of fans back then, and set up those type of moments later on. So, yeah,
for sure. Next week we'll be back. It'll be the month of March because it's the last weekend of February. We'll be back on March 1st as I believe we'll be live for the Elimination Chamber watch party. I'm not sure if we're doing a show that Sunday, but I will say, it's going to be a lot to set up before WrestleMania because Elimination Chamber will definitely tell a lot going into next week. But with that said, man, we've had a good Sunday. We kind of kept you on for about a good hour 15 from your boys here tonight. I am Booker and all the IWC, the Dynamite Kid, aka Saul Forrest, aka Respect the Mask. It has been episode 170 of the broadcast.
Taking the mask off. Now, next week I won't talk as much, folks. I know it's drowning. There's a lot of we were expecting a certain lineup and a certain
energy.
We will be back in full force soon enough. You'll get more varying opinions. Next month is Women's History Month. We might be highlighting those as well. There's a lot to look forward to in the future. We'll get it organized and ready for you. But until then, we'll see you.
All right, guys, man. We'll see you guys next week, man. Enjoy your weekend and enjoy the rest of Black History Month. Enjoy. Peace.
Find Kofi's mustache.
All right, y'all. Be easy.